Hello friends, and welcome to this casual fans review of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. I'm McKenna, I'm the casual fan, and I hope you enjoy what I have to say on the subject. Now, before we get into the actual review, I sort of wanted to go over what I mean by casual fan, and sort of explain my own relationship with role-playing and my own relationship with the World of Darkness. I have been playing tabletop RPGs for almost a decade now. Started with D&D, branched off into some other systems, Pathfinder, Fate, a couple different indie horror systems, Little Fears being one of them, and also some World of Darkness stuff. Changeling the Lost being my World of Darkness, or Chronicles of Darkness, I guess, bread and butter. I love everything about it. But as for Vampire the Masquerade, I am not as in-depth with that franchise as I am with some others. I did play the Bloodlines video game in college. That was my first introduction to VtM, and I absolutely loved it. But it wasn't until last year that I started playing an actual tabletop version of Masquerade. I was invited to join a V20 game online, and I absolutely adored it. I loved the players. I loved the book itself. I loved the rules. It was a great time. And in that year, I've, been slowly consuming more Masquerade-related media and, getting hyped for the new edition. But it's only been a year, and Vampire the Masquerade has a lot of lore. It has a lot of backstory, characters, meta plot that, it's too much for a person to consume in 1 year. I don't necessarily have the funds to be able to buy the backlog of source books. I don't have the time to read any of the supplemental material. Really, I wiki binged, and there's only so much that you can get from fan-made wikis. So while I do love the setting with all my heart, there is not necessarily the same level of emotional attachment to some of the narrative aspects that someone who has been into the franchise for longer than I am might have. So that's where I'm coming from. So first, overall feel that I got from reading the book. I think overall it's a great game. It's mostly well put together. I have some qualms with the art, but that's neither here nor there. I really like what it did mechanically with the game. I feel that in previous editions, really I can only speak for how it worked the impressions I got from Bloodlines, and then how it actually worked tabletop-wise in 20th edition, or 20th anniversary edition, rather. But there seemed to be a disconnect, I think, of, certain mechanical concepts and certain game concepts. Yes, I'm talking about the hunger system, and how there really wasn't one in previous editions. And part of the horror, I think, is supposed to be a kindred's potential lack of control over their beast and over the more monstrous aspects of their existence. And with a blood pool, yes, mechanically, you're not going to be able to use certain powers or do certain things, but the onus of the, passive effects of a low blood pool was really put on the players to portray through roleplay. And if part of the horror is a lack of control, giving the player total control sort of creates a disconnect there. Whereas with the new hunger die system, it takes the control out of the player's hands. You're going to get your messy failures, or your messy criticals rather, and you're going to get your bestial failures regardless of what the player wants, and then the player has to deal with them. And I think that is great. And kudos to the new White Wolf team for coming up with that, because it is just so clever, and it really just does a lot for the suspense and for the atmosphere of dice rolling. I think it makes it matter more than it could have otherwise. I think that in terms of building a setting, not necessarily not the World of Darkness overarching setting, but building your game setting, it has a lot of good tools for GMs to turn their home cities into World of Darkness settings. That's actually part of what drew me to Changeling the Lost, was how easy it was and what great advice there was for turning the area I was living into something supernatural and fantastic, something that I could throw players into and have them be invested. And this does the exact same thing. It's got so many good tips for that, and really good tools for GMs, especially in these the front and back covers. You've got your 50 victims list, which I think is a great tool if you need to pull an NPC out of nowhere. They're right there. You can just look at them. They've got so much personality for just being, a few sentences, and you can just drop them into your game easy enough, and it's good. I like it. A+ content, White Wolf. Let's see, what other things do I like about the rules section. I like what they did with disciplines, having sort of different options for them at different levels. With the exception of thaumaturgy in 20th anniversary, the disciplines were all really sort of linear in nature. There wasn't a lot of customization with them. Yeah, you could choose which, combinations of disciplines you wanted to sort of customize your power set. And with, later supplements, you could combine different disciplines for different effects. But I just sort of like that, single discipline lines sort of have options there for different powers at different levels. It sort of gives it a little bit more personality, I think. You can tailor the powers to the personality of your kindred, which is wonderful. I like that all of the other sort of magic type disciplines, thaumaturgy, quietus, anything like that, is now covered under blood sorcery, which again, in terms of accessibility, makes it so much easier for someone to approach that. And yeah, good job. Did the same thing with dementation and dominate. I think it makes sense for dementation to be a subset of dominate rather than its own discipline, and it works with the whole Malkavian issue of, do they have dominate or do they have dementation, depending on what edition you're playing. Now then, as for the second sort of thing I want to tackle here, that is the setting. That is the lore, that is the narrative, that is everything in the first part of the book. Now, the book starts out with this lovely little section on, it's a letter that a Wilhelmina Harker has written to one of her descendants who she embraced, and so they are now her child, sort of explaining the world and giving this child all of her research and whatnot about the World of Darkness, about the kindred existence, and, saying to this person here, this is what I found out, go find out more. It's a great tool, I think. It's a great looking tool. They just did a great job with the layout of all of this, to get new players hooked without overloading them with information. It gives you just enough references to the backstory, to the antediluvians, to what's going on with the Second Inquisition, to sort of sink your fangs in, and invites you to go out and learn more and draw your own conclusions. And because it's written from someone who knows a lot to someone who knows very little, it, the person, the voice that is speaking is speaking to someone who doesn't know, and a new player might not necessarily know. And having this here, it's like I said, it invites you to learn more. It's a really good hook. And had sort of the backstory references mostly been contained in there, I would have been amazingly happy. But then we get into the concepts in the Kindred Society and even the clan section, and things start to, I think, get a bit bogged down. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like where the setting and the meta plot is going. I think it has a really great survival horror feel. Everything that's going on with the Second Inquisition, I think, brings a fresh take on how the Masquerade works. It feels more easily integratable with, our world now than, the older editions, which would have worked perfectly well for the years they came out in, but, with increase in technology, with increases in world security, the old ways of enforcing the Masquerade did not age well. But it gets bogged down, I think, with a lot of terminology, a lot of references that a new player might not necessarily understand, or even a casual player like me who knows what some of these concepts are might not be as familiar with them as the book expects them to be. So let's just take an example here. ShrekNet. I know what ShrekNet is. But it's mentioned once, maybe twice in this book by name, but it's never explained. It never tells you what ShrekNet is. It sort of says that it's a Nosferatu database, but it didn't say what was on it. It didn't explain how integral ShrekNet was to Nosferatu culture and how they related to the rest of the kindred clans. It tosses around, the book tosses around terms like Justicar and Archon, but it doesn't really define them at all. It mentions the Society of Leopold. Okay, I guess that since it's mentioned alongside, the Second Inquisition, it is involved, but it doesn't really give you the same, or not the same, but it doesn't really, give you the importance that the Society of Leopold plays just as a hunter organization. The same with name dropping older characters. So we've got, this section on page 48 for the Jihad, which is like a Cliff Notes version of Kindred politics over the centuries, but it's not as useful as Cliff Notes, because Cliff Notes you go in to understand, and this one you can just come out confused. Someone who doesn't know who the Archangel Michael is, someone who doesn't know who Helena is, will see these names, and they'll just be like, who are these people and why should I care? They don't have the investment, they don't have the knowledge to appreciate or appreciate isn't the right word. I don't want to be coming off sound here like noobs are terrible. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But having these references bogs down the setting section, and I felt like I was slogging through it at points, even though I was passingly familiar with most of these names. And I really think that, it's a new edition. You really need to be aware of the new fans that you're going to be bringing in. And the setting section, to me, demonstrates a lack of awareness or a lack of care for that. That's not to say the entire section is garbage. Like I said, I really like what the setting is doing, and there's a lot of good information here on just, getting ready to play. It does give a very good, or it communicates very well what the tone is supposed to be and what types of people you'll meet in this setting. I really like the example of play they have on page 43 and onwards. I think it does a good job of showing players what they might encounter in a game before they ever actually start rolling dice. But again, it's just, you need White Wolf, ease up on the meta plot just a tad bit, Give the people who don't necessarily have that level of involvement, throw us a bone, please. That's all I'm asking. And the clan section, I think, was probably the most, I don't want to say disappointing, but I feel like they could have done so much more with it. Now, some clans like the Brujah, like the Gangrel, you really don't need to say much about them to sort of understand what they're about. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. But other clans, let's take the Tremere. Now, when I was saying before about, dropping terms and lingo and whatnot, they mentioned the Tremere pyramid a lot, but it's really not ever defined what the pyramid is. It's obviously a social hierarchy, but they never really tell you how important it was to Tremere structure, to the Tremere as a clan, as a unit, because the Tremere are a unit. And now I guess the Tremere is splintered. But it doesn't tell you why, it doesn't tell you how. So as a person who, is familiar with the Tremere, who knows their power structures and their unity, I read the Tremere section and was very confused. So you've got sort of this nice little blurb about Tremere himself and how he and his cohorts stole the gift of vampirism. And then we've got this section, well, not section, but this little dialogue between a representative of the Tremere, a representative from House Goretrix, and this lady named Karna. And I'm like, why are Tremere and Goretrix working together? Who is Karna? What is going on? What, and why? And I understand that a lot of this information was probably covered in Beckett's Jihad Diary. But I haven't read Beckett's Jihad Diary. I plan to at some point, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. And if this is your core book, the one book that should contain everything you need to play and understand a game, it should not be reliant on supplemental material for you to understand the game. I thought that should be, just rule one of a core book. But yeah, I felt left wanting for this section, I think. It wasn't so egregious with the other clans. I would have appreciated a little bit more history of them in their own sections, but there's already a lot in this book, and I can understand the shortened versions of their histories and their cultures. Though this is just an aside, it has really nothing to do with the quality of the book or whatnot, but the Malkavian section, this little conversation they have between Jeanette and Teresa Vorman from the Malkavian sisters from Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and just this one quote from Jeanette. Yeah, but how many nuggets of gold do you think I pried from the ghoul I was screwing? The repressed warlock I loosened up? Or Prince LaCroix when he was bouncing up and down on my love gun? I'm just like, did I just read that Jeanette Vorman canonically pegged Prince LaCroix? I did not come to this edition for that. And yes, it could be Jeanette just being overdramatic because that's what she does. But there it is. Thank you, White Wolf. Thank you for that image. But I think that's pretty much it for what I have to say. I guess I could talk a bit about the composition and the artwork and whatnot. For the most part, it's good. I like a lot of the painted art is really cool. The photography was mostly okay with this exception. I don't really know what's going on here. I'm confused. But like the art I can take or leave. The only other real criticism I have of it is I guess Some of this was concept art from the failed MMO, or the scrap MMO, however you want to phrase it. And I really like a lot of it. Like these guys right here in the character building section. But, they've got these, little labels next to them. Like we've got the veteran here, and we've got, where's the other one? We've got the scholar here, but there's really nothing else on the page that ties those labels to the character creation process. Later on, they do give skill sets for characters with those backgrounds, but when I first, was going through it, I was like, okay, why are we labeling this piece of art when there is nothing else on the page that relates to that label? It doesn't make or break the experience for me, and it's good art overall. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for what I have to say. Overall, I think it's a really good book. It's a solid rule system. Mechanically, it's a very solid game with some great tools for story building. And it lost some traction with the reliance on prior setting knowledge. It's a really good book. It could have been a fantastic book. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I would definitely recommend, if you're a new player, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this edition to start. I would definitely recommend 20th Anniversary Edition. It does a very good job of presenting the setting without being so reliant on narrative history and NPCs or not NPCs, but canonical characters and whatnot. So yeah, that is my review. I hope you guys liked it. If you are at all interested in anything else I have to do World of Darkness related, I do have 2 character blogs where I have recapped and illustrated 2 campaigns that I've been in. The first is Vampire the Masquerade, where I play a very frustrated, fed up with the world Toreador named Scott, and the other is for a Chronicles of Darkness game in Mage the Awakening, where I play a much more vivacious character named Ermid. So if you're interested in either of those, I'll have links in the description, and if not, well, have a great day, and thanks for listening.